Dear friends, thank you for supporting this channel on Patreon to join our growing family of donors, now 59 patrons strong. And remember, once we reach 100 active patrons, we will start sending out a 1-ounce U.S. Silver Eagle, autographed by your host, Dunnigan Kaiser, to one active supporter each and every month. Thanks for taking a minute to pitch in by going to patreon.com/reluctantpreppers and pledging your support today. Thanks very much.
Hey Reluctant Preppers, this is showing you just how easy it is to purchase silver without paying any premium over spot price. You just go to sdbullion.com/rp, scroll down and enter the special code to get silver without any premium, and they'll mail it to your mailbox, discreetly packaged. Inside you'll find a beautiful 10-ounce bar of fine silver, and you are able to purchase that and have it and add it to your stack and your collection without paying any premium, and you're supporting Reluctant Preppers along the way. Thanks.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We have a returning guest tonight. Will Lehr is the co-founder and managing partner at Perpetual Assets. We had him on over a year ago for the first time on our program because we had been desperately trying to get someone on to talk to us about the concept of precious metals IRAs. Many of us have had IRAs for decades and only thought that we could have those invested in the stock market or bonds, that sort of thing. But with the desire to reduce our risk exposure, especially against our retirement, which is something that nobody wants to see evaporate. There was the old joke when we had the dot-com bubble and collapse that we were going from 401ks to 101ks because the wealth effect evaporating that people saw. But Will Lehr is here to talk with us about a different topic tonight, and that is about the effect that cryptocurrencies and the paradigm shift that they're bringing is having on the sentiment across the community of both investors and entrepreneurs. Will, thank you so much for joining us here again on Reluctant Preppers.
Yes, sir. Pleasure to be back on. Thank you for having me. It's been I think a year now since I've been on, and a lot has developed since then.
And we'll put a link in the description of this video for anyone who wants to go back and learn more about that topic of precious metals IRAs, because it's a very important topic for people who want to have different options rather than having all their eggs in the stock market basket, as that's seeming a bit frothy or toppy depending on your opinions recently. But we'd like you to talk with us. I noticed an article that you published just recently called "The Optimism Effect and the Role of Cryptos," and it was interesting because a couple of the conferences that I had attended several years back were the Liberty Mastermind Symposia, and it was just after the peak around 2010, 2011 of silver and gold prices, and there had been, building up to that, about a 5-year straight, 45 degrees up kind of a line in precious metals, and there was a bit of excitement and euphoria, and then people saw that it was coming tumbling down and going, what did we get wrong? What we thought that this was going to be the big game changer when the world was going to recognize that things had changed. And we've been in about a 6-year doldrum now since then, and people and recently we had guests on saying that the sentiment has never been so low among those who are even sort of die-hard precious metals stackers, thinking, the missed opportunities that passed them by these last half a decade or so. But sometimes that's what people are willing to risk in order to not expose themselves to what they consider would be complete risk of total loss. But you were talking about a very different sentiment that you observed in a recent conference, and if you could talk to us about, I believe it's the Anarchapulco Conference. That's it's annual, I believe, and I know we've had Jeff Berwick on, who's one of the co-founders of that. But if you could talk to us about who was in attendance, who was being represented, what were the new trends, and what directions are you seeing that people need to be aware of, and why did your takeaways from that lead you to write the article about the optimism effect and the role of cryptos?
Yeah, Anarchapulco is held, it's Jeff Berwick and the Dollar Vigilante and their crew. They throw it every February. This was the fourth year. It was our third year. We missed the first, but we've been sponsors, exhibitors, and speakers 3 years in a row now. And the growth in across the board, attendees, speakers, topics, emotion, all of it, content, has been a really interesting progression to watch take place. And this year there were, they sold out 1,500 tickets, and then I think there were a few hundred more people there that showed up just to try to participate as much as they could. And it's a really awesome conglomeration, a unique conglomeration of people. The first year that I attended, it was much more financial, offshoring, coupled with a lot of different people from different communities of personal freedom, whether it was homeschoolers or people in this vegan, vegetarian type of movement. A lot of different sort of groups of people coming together, but mostly financial, like in the, get your assets offshore, get your money out of the system kind of thing. But the progression over the last several years, this past year, Ron Paul was the headline speaker. And then, of course, the Mike Maloney's and the David Morgans and Bix Weirs and all those metals people were there. A whole slew of, self-reliant folks, self-governant folks, call it anarchy, if you will. Anarchy's been given a really bad name by the propaganda apparatus for good reason. Anarchy just means self-rule, self-governance. And of course, the powers that be want that to seem very scary, self-rule and self-governance. So they paint the picture of anarchy as a bunch of these Antifa thugs burning stuff, and that it's nothing like that. In fact, 3 years in a row now, this conglomeration or group of these people have been some of the most peaceful people, right. Some of the most incredible conversations that I've ever had. Just last year was really that there was a little bit of cryptocurrency talk my first year, 3 years ago. Then last year, 12, 13, 14 months ago, there was a big burst in cryptocurrency talk. That's where I learned for the first time about smart contract technologies and the Ethereum platform. I think Ethereum was like $7 at the time. And I had incredible conversations with all these different fantastic people. And witnessing it this year, the growth, it's almost going to, we're watching the crypto space, education, knowledge base. We're watching the adoption rate slowly creep out into all facets. And it's a breath of fresh air for a lot of reasons. The article I wrote and was kind of centered around my speech there was, when I took the red pill some 8 years ago now, it was a scary place, there was, I didn't shower or shave or leave my computer for weeks, it was, many of us have been through that, right? We freak out our family. We make a bunch of rash decisions. We learn about all these truths that we didn't know to be truths. And, that was a dark, scary place where you're prepping and you're getting ready for, really, really dark and scary things. That was, cryptocurrency was just born, but I didn't know about it, and learned about it recent, 2012, and learned about Bitcoin and started learning about the technology. And here's one of the biggest takeaways that we started Perpetual Assets 5-6 years ago with the goal of helping people get their money out of the system, specifically their IRAs and 401ks and pensions and these types of things. And we've got a solution, a platform that we set up, a type of self-directed, and it lets the person control the investments. Now there are things you can't do. You can't take the money and put your kid through college, but you can control all the investments and invest in just about anything out there. It's been huge for precious metals for us for the last 5 and some odd years. And then in the last 12, 18 months, the crypto explosion, as we anticipated coming, right? How do we market this? How do we prepare for this? This wave is coming where people are going to want to put their IRA money into this. And so anyway, witnessing this sort of ebb of interest and adoption take place, the important thing that I keep taking away from this is the human mind and the way that we process and or understand these technologies. I mean, we have distributed ledger technology. We've got consensus algorithms. We've got this open source ledger communication. I mean, it's all these different technologies are built into the blockchain ecosystem. And I was open to Bitcoin early on, even as a metals person, as an anarcho-capitalist. I was focusing on the problems with our monetary system and how to remedy it or how to break free from it and create something better as it falls apart, which it is. Metals were the obvious, go-to for many years, and cryptos, when they came about, I didn't fully, took me a while to understand the mechanics is really, first you understand the mechanics, like how this mathematically works to a certain degree, and then it's the actual application. And that, I think, takes the human mind a certain stage of learning process to go through and to understand and to really kind of get it. It's like this light bulb with the application, how this certain project or currency or tokenized company is going to change the way we do this or the way we do that or the way we do this. And once those light bulbs start going off, I've gotten pretty deep into the space and been to a lot of executives meetings and, working on a project. And so there is a lot of hope in this technology. I mean, it's quite frankly couldn't have come at a better time. I think that Satoshi's white paper, when he released that white paper, I think that was Pandora's box. I mean, this technology has been around since the 60s and 70s. It was government, it was CIA secret technology that a bunch of cypherpunks, left and then leaked it out now to humanity. So Bitcoin, Satoshi's white paper for Bitcoin was a rough draft. It was Pandora's box, right? And now it's like it's open, and all of these ideas are out, and you have a whole industry now running with it, and it's coupled with it's a pretty exciting thing. It's a pretty exciting thing, and now you've got a lot of capital that has come into the space that is fueling these projects and ideas, and there's a lot of junk, there's a lot of scams, there's a lot of I've learned this in this industry. Freedom lovers, there's snakes in the grass, everywhere. But the good projects that are out there are going to do unbelievably disruptive things to the power centers as we know them today. And it's really exciting, and it's liberating, and it's I'm seeing people coming together and working on these projects, and I'm seeing Fortune 100 companies, executives come together with incredible interest on how to integrate this technology, which they still are grappling at understanding. I mean, we've got banks and regulatory use one bank you can walk into and tell them you want to buy cryptocurrency, and they'll close all your accounts and think you're a money laundering terrorist. And then other banks are completely friendly to it. So,
yeah, in your article, you were talking about how this is fueling a new optimism, because there had been, with the concern that people had about the fragility of our national debt and our fiat-based money system and overblown stock market and bond market and what's been called the bubble of everything, that there was people thought this is all going to come crashing down, and when it does, we're all going to be victims, and it's going to be Mad Max scenarios, and it's very easy to get depressed and feel hopeless when you feel that the powers that be are pulling the strings and you're small, and what can you do after all, and no matter what preparations you make, it can all be taken away from you one way or another. But you were talking in your article about how the advent of the cryptocurrency phenomenon really is a game changer, and in a sense it's the spirit of possibility and of empowerment of the little people who say, yeah, we can now do things. We can do things peer-to-peer in a decentralized way. We don't have to go ask permission, and don't have some authority that's a gateway that's controlling and interfering and being a constraint to all this. And now we can really grow again. And you talked about how something that's that revolutionary doesn't come around all the time. You talked about it being like I think you said it's something like every 500 years. There's such a huge change in the monetary new asset class, that kind of thing. I wonder if you could just help people connect the dots, because this may be more obvious to you or others who have been really steeped in this for the past several years. But for people who have only just heard some of the words around the edges, why is this so potentially earth-shaking and so game-changing?
Great question. And if we look at the statements from the powers that be, we can tell that they don't like Bitcoin. They don't like this technology, and if you've studied the advent of the technology over the last 10 years, there have been numerous attacks from centralized, but including right now. It's funny, we're on a conversation here talking about the optimism effect with cryptocurrencies, and here we are in just this epic bear market right now. I mean, sentiment is just in the gutter, which is a buy sign if you want to, be
contrarian.
Yes, thank you, contrarian. So the optimism effect, it's this technology is disruptive. What I talked about every 500 years is the birth of a new asset class. So I said this is not just a disruptive technology. This is not just the birth of a new asset class, which happens every 500 years, roughly. This is a revolution. This will be the first time in human history where the people will overthrow multi-thousand-year legacy systems by creating their own currency and their own system for transferring value. That this is beyond unprecedented. So when we understand the money controllers, okay, I mean, when we go back in history and understand, our entire slavery, it exists based on fractional reserve lending, on central banking. And that we can trace our Rothschild, enemies all the way back. And that's, let me issue one of the Rothschilds, let me control and issue a nation's currency, and I care not who writes its laws. So it's this control of money and the issuance of money, fiat currency, I should say, that allows for incredible control and incredible just malfeasance, just misuse, misappropriation, theft, if you will, of these different arms and industries. So this act of controlling the issuance of a nation's currency allows that central banking apparatus to now control everything from the military in that country to the financial sector in that country to the pharmaceutical and the entire medical industry within that nation to the oil and gas exploration, the mining,
media.
Okay, media. Thank you. The reason that we are still under these incredibly depressed precious metals prices. Well, they're numerous. It's to prop up the con, the fiat currency con, and it's done through these incredible propaganda apparati that are numerous and all encompassing and all over the place. But what the idea of Satoshi's white paper, okay, Bitcoin's white paper, this idea, this Pandora's box that came out, okay, it's a peer-to-peer electronic currency system, or a peer-to-peer system for exchange of value. Okay. And what it does is it creates, it brings in distributed ledger technology. What does that mean? Well, okay, so if you think of a company, they have a centralized ledger. They have their own accounting books that are centralized. It's for their eyes only, for their accounting team's eyes only. And, it's not a shared sort of, this is their books. They can be certainly manipulated in that fashion, right? Because they're controlled by one central source who writes the numbers in there and then says, here's the numbers. Okay, well, a distributed ledger would be if you had numerous accounting teams, okay, all working on an open platform where everyone can see what goes in, what comes out, all these inputs and how they're. So it's like an accounting firm working the checks and balances of an operation, working the financial math, if you will, on a decentralized basis. It's not just a couple of guys in a boardroom doing it, okay? It's a whole bunch of different computers all doing it at the same time, verifying with one another. So there's not one central command center, okay? It's decentralized. That's just the ledger aspect. That's just the actual accounting ledger of the blockchain, of Bitcoin transactions. There are other elements of this decentralization that are built into this technology that allow for two people or multiple parties, okay, to transact data and or value. Okay, it could be a stock certificate that's traded. It could be an ounce of silver that's traded for a crypto. It could be, it could be a car. Veritasium is one of my favorite projects, and it's going to be a full-on, it is. He's already in beta. A lot of these projects are coming online now. So we're not just pipe dream, let's change the world someday anymore. We have active products. Salt has $30-some million in active loans and another, $500 million in a huge amount in pending loans, crypto collateralized loans. So why is this so disruptive? Why is this so liberating to mankind? Well, when we understand the control apparatus, when we understand the fiat monetary system and how it works to enslave us, and when we couple that with what blockchain technology does, is it allows us as free humans. It's like free market. It's basically like it's like providing gasoline for the free market. It's a way for humans to transact data and or value almost instantly, almost free, without middlemen. Okay, without middlemen that we're used to utilizing, that in many industries charge us 30% per annum, like in factoring, in the invoice factoring business. Populous is a company that I really like that's doing launching factoring. There's huge profit centers to the banking industry that certain. So you have cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, like Litecoin. These are actual. It's actually built like a currency. It's built as a unit of exchange of value. Okay, and then you have tokens, which are companies that launch their company based on a blockchain infrastructure. Okay, Salt Loans is one of them. So by doing so, the tokens don't really represent like they sort of represent ownership in the company, but they more represent ownership in the utility of the tokens. Are used for utility. They're used to make the company's operations work. So, and some of these are fantastic, just game changer ideas. So it's exciting. It's the more I've gotten into this space and the more that I have gotten into different projects, I mean, I'm working with some gentlemen now on a project that is cryptocurrency and precious metals related, and those of us that are that are precious metals bugs have, there's plenty of precious metals bugs that are anti-crypto. They haven't gotten it yet. They don't, but there are crypto metals projects that will ultimately free the manipulation, that will ultimately create so many awesome systems for transfer of value between you and me and your listeners, and decentralized peer-to-peer sort of trades taking place. There's so much going on. It's just, and again, it liberates it liberates the little guy. I mean, smart contract technology. Okay, this is a way for us to write in simple or very complex human interactions into a contract that normally may or may not even have a financial element to it. Maybe I'm going to pay you to paint my house or something, but like, you can write all these if, then what type scenarios into these smart contracts, and you can build these contracts to replace what would be a huge accounting and legal apparatus.
We heard guests on talking about smart contracts being able to be the utility of that, being able to help with global trade when you have shipments that are going to take time to get from point A to point B, and you have currency fluctuations that can happen along the way, or different things like that, that it allows you to have sort of this positive and transparent, accountable registration of value along the way, and no ambiguity when people need to understand whether they've got the official version, the most current version of the contract, or if it's reflecting the latest information. It's guaranteed intrinsically to the and that's now something you touched on very briefly earlier when you talked about how fraught the fiat money system is with opportunities, windows of vulnerability that allow for crime, for evil, for theft to happen. One of those is dilution through basically counterfeiting. And in our country, we happen to, ever since the formation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, handed over the keys of the currency to a private company, and which, again, still most people don't realize that, but that there's, we had a guest on recently who was talking about, this Wayne Jett, author of the Fruits of Graft, talking about the confiscation of gold bullion by Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1933 and 34, and the devaluing of the U.S. currency, and how at that moment when currency was revalued from a 20th of an ounce of gold to a 35th of an ounce of gold overnight, that these huge sums of money that were basically it diluted into the money supply, but it all went into dark pools, and now it's being used for purposes that ordinary citizens have no visibility of, no control over, whatever, no accountability, that kind of thing. But in the crypto space, there's this promise that there can be a known quantity, and that things are open and transparent, and that should curtail this kind of things that happen in the dark, so to speak. Other aspects of that you think are empowering, like that lack of dilution and the transparency?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the cryptocurrency mathematical structure is trustless by design. So if you properly implement an open source blockchain project, you can, whatever project we're working on, whether it's a precious metals type of project or something else, you can eliminate trust from the equation. So like escrow services, for example, when you have to use a third party for escrow.
Right.
I mean, there are so many incredible applications on that. I mean, think about an industry where you might transact business. I mean, it's unbelievable what you can do. I was meeting with some executives in the logistics industry, and they, from Fortune 100, 500 companies,
like shipping and and warehousing and that sort of stuff, fulfillment.
Exactly, yeah. And they are looking at how to integrate blockchain tech into just-in-time delivery systems, and all of the. I mean, my head was spinning. They don't even understand the financial aspects that they can like replace the banks and really, but just from the operational standpoint,
knowing where your stuff is.
System. Yeah, knowing where your stuff is, or let's say you're shipping produce and you've got temperature controls and you've got time controls and this and that. And I mean, you can know, that lettuce was kept at these degrees for that time period. And, while it was in Phoenix, it had 10 minutes. I mean, all this. And then driver times, like this madness that they go through with trying to coordinate and maximize all these driver times and all these efficiencies they were talking about. Another huge space is in personal documentation. So identification. So those of us in the West this isn't, I have a passport, I have a driver's license, it's, I have, identity verification. I mean, maybe you've been through this if you've ever had your identity stolen and you've gone through some of these, but, this incredibly brilliant woman gave this presentation, and she showed a picture of, and it was in Syria, and it was a lake with a bunch of rocks at the at the beach, and it was a couple people sitting there, and sitting in the sun at the base of this lake, and they had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of documents, just pages, laying out in the sun drying. Okay, and apparently there is the biggest part of this Syrian humanitarian crisis is lack of ability to identify people. So you've got like doctors, lawyers, you've got like high productive members of society that can't prove their identity, and they're stuck and they can't get out, and this and the other. I mean, blockchain solves all that. I mean, it can solve all that in a decentralized fashion as well, where there's still privacy.
When we talk about, and this is something that people, I think gives people pause, is that when they're holding a piece of silver or gold in their hand, there's this instinctive sense of, I understand this. As a human person, I understand this. This is something that I now have. I didn't have it before, but now I have it, and because I have it, it gets you out of that trust concern. Is like, now this is a real asset. This is like a store of value, that sort of thing. It's simple. If there are limitations to it, though, like if you want to send a whole bunch of precious metal around the world to buy some property or something, now all of a sudden you got to, are you sure it's in transit? Are you sure it's going to get there? Are you sure? So it does have all kinds of physical limitations, but at the basic sense, it's understandable. When people look at the fiat money system and they talk about derivatives and how money gets created and through these open market committees and all this stuff, and it becomes this house of cards that people finally just give up, and it's too complex. I can't understand it. And we've been told by multiple guests that it's made that way on purpose, because that makes people give up, and allows that sort of that freedom to do evil to those who are the powers that be. In the case of cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies and hashgraph and all these other things, it can even seem even more not obvious to people who we live in the physical world, but so how can we're being told, hey, this new thing, it's actually going to empower you, and hey, it's going to take the middleman out, and it's going to give you back your sort of the keys to your life, because now you can do things directly with other people without this interference and centralized authority in the middle. And it sounds good, but it still seems bewilderingly complex and difficult. How do you get past that? And people are concerned about, what if it can be hacked, or what if these exchanges can get shut down, or restrictions can come up. So balancing this optimism is kind of this wall of reluctance. We call ourselves reluctant preppers here because we think it shouldn't have to be this way. But so in this new world of crypto potential and future, all these possibilities, most people aren't going to understand all the ins and outs of this, but is there some part of it that can really help them to know that I understand enough to get this? This is a key takeaway that I need to know how I can keep myself, my business safe, and be able to do what I need to do in this new world. Do you think that'll just come with time? It'll be able to be understood by people once they see examples of it, or what's going to bring that confidence back to people not just being overwhelmed because it's so technically advanced?
We are still early adopter sort of time frame with this. I mean, if you remember, when the internet came out and emails, and the conversations, it was a very similar sort of debate or series of conversations. And this technology is far more disruptive than even the internet or email. It really, like, I learned about Bitcoin. And it still took me a good 5 years or more. I learned about it. I was accepting it as a currency on our website. I was like, yeah, this makes great sense. I'd been to some head spinning, conferences, the Austin conference, where, so I'd seen the light, if you will. I remember coming out of that Austin conference, calling my wife and going, oh my God, babe, I don't know if it's going to be Bitcoin, but this technology is going to change the way we do everything in the world. And that was like 5 years ago, that was 5 years ago. So, and I'd known about Bitcoin for 2 or 3 years at that point. And I was just kind of, maybe after Mt. Gox, I started buying a little bit, No, I guess before Mt. Gox, I was never like, oh, I'll buy a little bit here, half of one here and a quarter of one there, when it was $400 and $200 and this type of thing. Mt. Gox happened and it killed sentiment. But even after Mt. Gox, that was when I came out of that conference. So I think it's going to take time, and it's also going to take advancements. Okay. So right now, all the capital that just came into this space in the last 12 months is now being deployed to build, Apple-like interface systems for people, so that, my mom and, grandmas and such are using cryptocurrencies with ease. Again, we're just still very early. We're still very early. And for those of us that go through the growing pains of learning how to buy this stuff and move it around, and will be rewarded incredibly. So it takes time, and it's going to take, it took me years and a lot of exposure to understand the depth of these projects. But I think as the rubber starts meeting the road, as it is now, I think as you get more adoption, when you start having, large companies like Amazon and Starbucks and, but the handfuls of others announcing partnerships with Litecoin or this or that, as accepting it as currency, you're going to see the next massive wave up, and not just in interest, but in adoption, as people start to talk about how this is going to change this industry, and here's why. Not just on podcasts like ours, but on larger publications and things. I'm not a mainstream media fan, and they're idiots with this whole watching crypto come into the mainstream media. They're just, I don't know if it's a conspiracy to shake people out. they're Ripple is a total centralized banker coin project. All the crypto people that know crypto hate Ripple. It's just they don't like Ripple. I'll trade it and make a buck out of it, but it makes me feel dirty when I do. It's a banker coin. It's a coin for bankers. It's literally for interbank settlements, and built by bankers for bankers. It's a centralized, nothing we would ever use to liberate humanity. We want something decentralized. And that's the thing with crypto, is it can't really be hacked or taken over. Excuse me. That didn't interrupt us. It can't really be hacked or taken over because of the open source functionality of it, because there's all these independent nodes and computers, thousands of them all over the world, like building the computing infrastructure. So if there's a fork or there's a centralization effort, it'll be known to the network, to the people. Hey, we've got one mining farm in China. All of a sudden, they're eating up 70% of the mining for whatever coin. Like, this thing's getting centralized. Like, so it's all open source data. You can see all that stuff. So I'm sorry I tangented all over the place on that.
That's
on
all
that
right.
question.
I wanted to rope us back in on one particular aspect for our viewers who are always interested in the aspect of protecting their family, protecting themselves from financial ruin, and making the right move to take care of business for their family. When you think about the potential of a major systemic disruption, whether it's a natural cause, or whether we actually do have a meltdown or collapse of our current fiat monetary system and the stock markets and the bond markets and all this, and seizing up of non-liquidity in the capital markets or whatever. What does cryptos bring to that whole picture? Why would people be better off being aware of what crypto technology offers, facing the potential of a major disruption in our current financial system?
Good question. And many in this space see this technology as the means to get us through that sort of a rocky scenario. Many people see it as like a blessing to humanity in this time. And I wrote, that was part of the article too, is that like this technology, for what we're up against, if you're talking about a systemic financial event, Greece and Venezuela on a national sort of basis,
or a global basis.
You're God, anything goes, my friend, at that point, right? I mean, cryptos, we'd need a global EMP to take out crypto. Like, we'd have to go back into the dark ages. I mean, for cryptos to go away, we'd need like global EMP. I don't even know, the ramifications there. But we wouldn't even care about money at that point, right? We'd be figuring out how to survive for a long time, those of us that did. But from a financial collapse standpoint, again, I think it appears that the powers that be know what's going on. It appears that there are good forces behind the scenes. It appears that there's, this race to, almost like, how fast can the system crash, or how long can we draw it out further so that we can get these systems implemented? And I think there's a lot of this type of design going on behind the scenes. I really do. I mean, if we really study what's been happening in these markets, with government, with asset acquisition, with price manipulation.
Yep.
I mean,
central banks buying up stocks, and the plunge protection team, and the stabilization funds, making sure that making sure that every bond auction doesn't fail, and on and on and on. This very unnaturally sustained and propped up, so to where people say natural price discovery is dead, that all markets are now manipulated markets, that kind of thing. You're saying that's evidence, if you read between the lines, what I'm hearing you say is that's evidence that there are huge efforts to keep this system on life support for until something. And maybe that something is, you're saying, till a bridge to a system that can survive and replace that is capable. Yeah.
I mean, if we woke up tomorrow morning in a financial chaos, we'd be in a lot of trouble. Another 6, 12, 18 months. If that, the more time that we have as a society to implement more plans, the better. I mean, just as a society today versus 12 months ago, it feels like there's a lot. The crypto, so. I mean, if we look at what's happening on, just looking at some flashing through some crypto and blockchain news related stuff, if we look at governments and government agencies all over the world, and we see what they're doing, you see this sort of lack of mental, or this progression of mental understanding within it. You see this taking place. You see, unless it's even more conspiracy where they're trying to slow things down. But I truly fully believe that we are in the midst of cryptocurrencies and token-based economies being implemented to replace our current system. or augment it or serve alongside it for a year or two or three while it, I don't know if we get a hyperinflation overnight or if we have bouts of it. And bouts, I mean, my buddy Jim Willies of the world that talk about more of a strategic sort of write-downs. I think you'll see a multi-year. You're going to see fireworks probably very soon, and I think that there's plans in place on implementation of these technologies into our current systems to augment and ultimately replace this transition. If we another at this rate, another 3 to 6 months of blockchain project development, you'll have a lot more transactability taking place on the retail level, on wholesale, Goldman Sachs just went in and acquired Poloniex, which was the largest, the king exchange a year ago, making these exchanges make millions and millions of dollars in profits a day. Lo and behold, Poloniex had a whole bunch of series of unfortunate events starting about 18 months ago. A whole interesting series of unfortunate events that and then their value of their company plummeted from, I don't know what it was, to 400 million when it was just acquired in the depth of this crypto smashdown, right? When you've got governments saying it's a scam,
right?
Jamie Dimon, it's a scam. Meanwhile, he's buying his San Francisco office is buying it and meeting with blockchain people the next day at a conference in his San Fran offices. It's the typical game, man. They're saying one thing and they're doing another.
Right. Goldman
goes in and invests $400 million and buys Poloniex. What does that tell me? That tells me that Goldman Sachs is realizing these massive profits on these cryptocurrency exchanges by exchanging fiat in and out of cryptos. Yeah. I mean, dude, the good ones are making 3, 4, 5, 6 billion a day. I'm sorry, million a day. Huge profits. So yeah, I think Goldman goes in to buy Poloniex and now invests a whole bunch of capital infrastructure there, and now goes after their institutional buddies. Hey guys, open up the floodgates for hundreds and hundreds and millions of dollars to come into crypto now, and we'll, of course, still be ripping 3 to 5% off that. I mean, Goldman's going to make. I can't imagine. I realize that's what they're doing. They're going to open up Poloniex and they're going to bring in institutional money. They're not looking for mom and pop traders like us. They're looking for, their friends like Jamie Dimon who want to dump in, 400 million in a day or whatever. So yeah, it's interesting times, and things are changing so fast, and we didn't, this technology we didn't have it a decade ago, and it's been really interesting to see the developments, to see the optimism effect, to see, hey, we might not, have to, eat beans and shoot our neighbors, and God, it's not laughable. It's a horrible.
Yeah,
right?
but what you're talking about is a possible bridge to a new world where we don't have to go through a deeply destructive stage because there's nothing else. If there is actually a way, and the real promise, what I'm hearing about, the real optimism, the reason people are getting excited about this and businesses and so on is because is that sense of liberation and freedom, transparency, integrity, globalization in a way that's distributed and non-centralized, and that sort of thing that this can provide. So a lot of people have hopes for this. A lot of people are a bit wary and concerned that it seems like there seems to be always, in the past, the history shows that there's an angle for people in power to come in and find some way to get some kind of a monopolistic angle on this, and whether they make laws saying it's outlawed or whether they do something to basically make it so the little guy loses again. But we're with you on your pointing out that some of the reasons that people have embraced precious metals all along is that idea that it empowers the individual and removes this counterparty risk and that sort of thing. So there are a lot of parallels there. And you're right that people like David Morgan and others who have been longtime adherents of the sound money and precious metals are also embracing the promise of distributed ledger technology and peer-to-peer and all that sort of thing. So it's a very exciting time. It sounds like it's so new that it's not completely clear yet to people who want to say, okay, tell me what I can do. What are 1 or 2 or 3 steps I can take to make sure that I'm, by being aware of this, that I'm taking care of business for my family. Maybe that's going to become more clear. People would have said, I know that Trace Meyer and others who are early evangelists for this were saying 5 years ago, everybody just participate, just at least get some stake. You mentioned you took a small stake in there. Get a small stake in this game because it is going to be the future. So we're going to stay tuned to that, and we'd love to have you back on as this story unfolds, because we have had other guests on there talking about. Some people are predicting that this is going to be a very eventful year for the financial or political arenas, and it'll be interesting to see the role that cryptos play and whether they provide a means for human liberty to advance at this time of change. So, Will, is there anything that people need to know about where they can find you and find your work?
Yeah, perpetualassets.com is our website. We've got we do the IRA rollover, which is great if you've got money in an IRA and you want to take control of it. We've got a metals card, precious metals card, where you can get a Visa debit card and have metals on account. So a couple things like that we do. But I would. It's real simple if people want to dabble your toe into the crypto markets. Go to Coinbase or Gemini or Kraken and set up an account, a personal account, link your bank account, buy a couple $100 of the stuff or whatever. I felt the most comfortable in my early days just buying a little bit of couple bucks worth of Bitcoin here, couple bucks worth of Bitcoin there. I think if you do that right now with Litecoin, LTC, which is on Coinbase and a lot of these other larger exchanges too, Litecoin is it's one of my favorites, and I think if your readers just dip their toe in the Litecoin pool in 6 or 9 or 12 months, I think they'll be quite surprised.
Very good. We've been speaking with Will Lehr. He is the co-founder and managing partner at perpetualassets.com. Will, thank you again for joining us on Reluctant Preppers.
Thanks so much for having me, and always a pleasure.